Ask the Doctor by GPDQ. Expert medical advice for you, your family and your colleagues.
Hi all, this is Lucas and I look after corporate healthcare at GPDQ, and we have our clinical director on with us, Dr. Katharina Kristalis, and we are going to talk about our shared friend or enemy, hay fever, today.
Thanks, Lucas. Yeah, I think that in my case, this is our shared enemy for sure. Yeah, so let's discuss today the symptoms of hay fever, some general advice, kind of self-management techniques, some over-the-counter medicines, and what to do if they're not working, and help people through the symptoms of hay fever.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so without further ado, let's get started with, I guess, the symptoms. So what are hay fever symptoms?
So I think everyone who suffers with hay fever knows the symptoms. They're terrible, aren't they? Especially this time of year. So sneezing is one of the symptoms. Itching in your nose, nasal itching, nasal congestion, itching in your mouth, your palate. Sometimes a cough. You can get some eye discharge, eye redness, eye watering, tiredness, all the good things.
Sounds like yesterday for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure there are questions like, is there a crossover between hay fever and COVID?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's actually a good idea that we do a separate video on some of the new symptoms of COVID, but some of the symptoms that cross over. So we all know about the cough, the temperature, and the change to your sense of smell or taste, but some of the less documented or less well-known symptoms of COVID include a runny nose, for example. So there are crossovers between hay fever and COVID. I'd say probably the biggest one is a runny nose as a crossover. Okay,
interestingly. So, and can you talk us through some simple ways on how we can avoid hay fever?
Definitely. So it depends a little bit what you're allergic to. So people have different allergies. There's tree pollens, grass pollens, weed pollens, and general kind of good advice as a first step would just be avoidance. So avoiding walking in grassy or open spaces, and the time of day when hay fever is worse is the early morning or the early evening, when that's when the pollen count is high. So if you can avoid these times of day to be out, that's a good point, or avoid putting your washing out at these times of day, because it can kind of collect allergens and then you put it on, which obviously triggers your hay fever. Shutting windows or car windows as much as possible, and especially again at these times of the day. And if you do get exposed to the allergens, then perhaps having a shower and even washing your hair so that you're kind of getting rid of them completely and kind of starting afresh. So they would be kind of basic, simple first steps to try if if it was just mild hay fever and you didn't need to take any further treatments.
Okay, that's interesting. And if the self-management strategies are not necessarily working, what can be done?
So a lot of things can be done. There's lots of things to try. So firstly, antihistamines, and they can be either oral or intranasal, so in the nose. And it's worth considering though, some of them do cause drowsiness. Can cause fatigue, tiredness, etc. So the ones that are not drowsy, some examples are loratadine and cetirizine, and you can get these over the counter. But one of the things with the antihistamines is they typically help more with sneezing and a runny nose, but not so much with nasal congestion. So it's worthwhile knowing which symptoms you have and trying to get the right type of treatment. For nasal congestion, there's nasal sprays. One of the nasal sprays is a nasal steroid. And this is quite effective. It typically doesn't work immediately, so you need to use it for a little while, and it works after a few hours, but you might not get the best response for a few weeks. But it's worth remembering, just as we said about showering to get rid of the allergens, if you're suffering from nasal congestion or a runny nose or itchy nose or something like that, and you're tempted to use a nasal spray of any sort, whatever type it is, one of the best things to do is actually to wash your nose first, because the allergens are inside your nose. And if you wash your nose out, it gets rid of the allergens. So then when you put the treatment on, you're putting the treatment onto your kind of nasal mucosa rather than putting it onto the allergen, if that makes sense. So nasal douching, just literally washing the nose out and then putting the treatment on.
Oh, okay. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a really good tip. And I use it myself, and actually you can tell just washing your nose out is simple, but it's quite effective. And same with eyes, washing your eyes out, cold compresses, trying not to rub your eyes if you can avoid rubbing them. And then you've got eye drops as well. So a good eye drop is to try as a lubricating eye drop. But there's other things, and you can speak to your pharmacist about these over-the-counter remedies.
Sure. So I guess this one is almost like a personal one as well, because I've taken tablets, but they haven't been really helping me. So what shall I do if I'm still suffering from hay fever, or if I get side effects from the treatment, like loudness or wild days?
If you've tried these self-management techniques, tried the over-the-counter techniques, if you've spoken to the pharmacist and seen if they can help you, and you're still in a position where you're struggling, then I would say speak to your GP, because it might be, first of all, that you've got either the wrong technique of using something, or we've got the wrong diagnosis. As I said, there's a bit of crossover with COVID, but also there's crossover with other conditions. Or perhaps you just need a different type of medication. So if you've tried these things and not working, then don't suffer in silence.
Yeah, no, this is super valuable, and I already had a few takeaways myself. So thank you ever so much, as always, super insightful. And I would like to thank you all for listening. Please do tell your friends, and remember this week to put yourself and your health first.
Thanks, Luke.